Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about heat shrink tubing and its uses for prepping and survival. This in my country costs €2 for a set like this. The first application I see is to add grip. This is a tactical pen, bolt action type, as you can see, and it's aluminum, so it's quite slippery. So I just added a little section here of heat shrink. It makes the pen much more comfortable to hold. It gives a more secure grip. It gives a more positive grip. I know where I am on the pen, whether it is for writing or for other applications, of course. Here is a small box opening knife, and it's skeletonized, of course. It's just one-piece constructions. There are no scales on the handle. Can be not very reassuring to use, given that there's basically virtually no guard. So I just added a couple pieces of heat shrink tubing to the handle, one large piece and one small one, and that gives me an index point to know where I am on the handle. It's tactile feedback, and it of course adds a little bit of girth to the handle and some grip too. Just a silly example of what can happen if you heat your material a bit too much. We have here just a placeholder for a tube. It's just a very thin plastic tube, and it's to represent covering and protecting a section of tubing, which is basically the original intent of heat shrink tubing. It could be used for a camelback. It could be used for some sort of water filtration system, especially gravity ones. It can be used to secure connections. If you put a section of tubing inside another one and you don't want the connection to come loose or to start leaking, you might want to start adding a piece of heat shrink above it and just shrink it down, and it will add some friction to secure the connection and maybe prevent contamination from the outside. So just a placeholder for protecting sections of tubing that may be exposed to abrasions or to multiple flexing and material fatigue. Heat shrink tubing to protect tubing. In the same vein of protection, this is a razor blade that I placed inside a heat shrink piece, and that makes it much more secure for transport. If I were to place this in a survival kit, for instance, it might damage the other contents of the kit. In this state, it's rather easy to remove. It can be removed with just my hands like this, as you can see, or just if you were to stuff this inside an EDC pouch or inside a small toolkit and you wouldn't want to reach in and hurt yourself, this might be a way to just isolate the kinds of sharp edges that you wouldn't want rubbing on yourself or on your gear. So yeah, just a razor blade with some heat shrink around it. Oh, and it makes it more silent also, so it can bang around and it won't make as much of a racket. Noise suppression, this is still a placeholder, but a very small section of chain, and as we all know, chain can be pretty noisy and not very discreet and sometimes aggravating. So putting a section of heat shrink around a chain and shrinking it down will help reduce noise, will help reduce glare, and will help improve flexibility somewhat, if that's something you're looking for. Same idea with protecting from sharp edges. This is just a suspension hook, and the ends can be a bit sharp. If you were to suspend something like a camelback, plastic bag, whatever, maybe even clothes, it would eventually rip through them, and placing heat shrink on one end is one way to prevent wear on your gear from sharp and unfinished edges like this. So this is a pocket knife, and this is a pocket knife clip that I just detached. Heat shrink can be used to protect your clips from abrasions if you want to keep your knife as new as possible, but it can also be used to protect the environment from your knife clip. If you know, you know, but for instance, knife clips can be very damaging to car paints or to walls if you rub against walls, for instance. So putting a piece of flexible rubbery tubing over the clip will prevent the clip from rubbing and damaging anything. Plus it in this case it's not very apparent, but it would reduce glare if that's something you're into in a tactical situation, for instance. This is a shiny clip, as you can see, and placing a black coating over it will reduce glare and might also make it a bit more tacky and therefore hold the knife inside the pocket a bit more securely. Oh, and by the way, for those who are wondering, this is a Kershaw link. One other application also is for maybe game processing and skinning. I'm not a hunter, so I'm not exactly very well versed in skinning tasks, but if you had a knife like this with a sharp point and you don't want to pierce internal organs or damage viscera or something, you might want to put a couple pieces of heat shrink over the tip of your knife and just shrink it down. It will hold in place, it's very secure, and it will prevent you from poking your finger, so it will only leave the belly of the knife exposed, allowing you to work with some peace of mind. Same thing if you were to maybe scrape or use your pocket knife or your knife as a draw knife, putting a piece of heat shrink will make it maybe a bit more reassuring to use. So yeah, and it basically doesn't, on this model actually, it doesn't hurt anything when it comes to closing, so yeah, why not? Another application that came to mind is joining maybe a couple loops of cordage together with a heat shrink wrap, holding them secured, and that would allow for some sort of quick detach or rip-free system. If I were to get caught on something, maybe in a vehicle, and I wanted to be able to yank myself free, I could just loop a couple things like this, and it would hold together quite nicely, really no problem. There's not much play, and if I needed to rip away, I could just pull on it like this, and it actually rips free and just blows out like that, and allows you to escape, basically. So yeah, a couple loops, heat shrink in the middle, and you have an improvised quick detach system. When it comes to tethering things in place, those are of course a couple carabiners, and you can use heat shrink to secure the gate of a carabiner in place so that it doesn't open by accident. In this case, this is a Night Eyes double-gated carabiner, and there's one gate here that's completely free, for instance, and I wanted to secure the second gate, so I put heat shrink over it, and now I just cannot open this gate. It won't open and just release whatever you put inside. So yeah. One application that is maybe a bit more well known is protecting electronics. This is just a random charging cable I had, and if you were to experience a very common failure when it comes to cables like this, where the cable starts fraying and coming loose and coming apart right here at the connection between the head and the cable itself, you could use some heat shrink to prevent too much movement and to help keep things together. Something gear makers use a lot is putting heat shrink over pull tabs for zipper pulls, and that helps keeping the pull tab rigid so that it sticks out and is easy to grab, and it also prevents it from just coming loose. I like this application a lot. Some bag makers and gear makers do it systematically on all their pull tabs, and some do not. So when it's not the case, I like to do it myself, at least on the most important and prominent pull tabs on the gear. Heat shrink the tubing, and of course it becomes very rigid. It won't go anywhere, and it will help grab and improve on tactile feedback to help you operate your gear in the dark, for instance. And one last, not very well known and very niche application that I can see is as self-destructing sheath for some sort of tool or edged weapon, like this. So this is just a random stake / paring knife maybe, and it doesn't come with a sheath, and if I were to want to carry this in a discreet manner, maybe strapped to the inside of the forearm, or maybe in the belt, against the torso, maybe in a boot, and I didn't want to, or didn't have anything to improvise a sheath, I could just slide a piece of heat shrink, shrink it down, and the thing with this is that it will self-destruct when I apply pressure to the edge. So if I were to cut something, or maybe stab into something, this would just self-destroy and separate and make the edge apparent again and useful again. So I'm not saying it won't diminish the performance of the cutting power of the knife, of course, but it would help carrying it without having to unsheath it to use it. It's just place it wherever you want to place it, and when it comes to using it, just grab it, use it, and you're done. It will take care of itself in a sense. Just to prove that, so of course this edge is completely protected, there's nothing. It's a very sharp knife, of course. It's a very thin knife, it's quite flexible, and it's very sharp. I sharpened it myself before the video, and it would definitely cut me very badly if I were to do this on the raw edge. And just to prove that it works, if I were to cut this flex tie, for instance, with the edge covered, I would just have to apply some pressure, and it just self-destructs the heat shrink on the edge, exposes the edge, and cuts through the material. So interesting application for concealed carry and expedient arming of oneself in non-permissive environments with a non-ideal gear. So very interesting application. I'm going to think a bit more on this. Oh, and of course, as we said before, reduces glare, reduces tinkling sound, and if it falls, protects the edge from abrasions. One last thing with the heat shrink. This material is originally meant for electrical applications, so it's more like a construction material for electrical work, and it's very, very fire retardant. Do not try to use heat shrink to improvise homemade fire starters, or to waterproof, to use it to help as a tinder for fire making. It will not work. If you try to light this on fire, the flame just starts a little bit and then dies down. It does not, and then it just smolders a bit and dies out. So it does not work for fire making. If you wanted to use a rubbery material like this for fire making, I would much rather use duct tape, very simply. For that, it's much more flammable, it's much easier to work with, and it's reusable, which this is not really. So yeah, don't try to use heat shrink for fire. Very bad idea. Of course, if you had different colors of heat shrink, you could use it to mark and differentiate your gear, but those are the applications I see. Quite diverse in a sense, and very easy to implement and very cheap, so why not try to improvise something on your own, have fun with it. And don't worry if you do not have a heat gun. You don't need it, you just need a simple lighter, not even a turbo lighter, just a simple Bic lighter will do. Just be careful not to heat your working piece too much, especially if it's made of plastic or cordage like this. So that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and have a good one, guys.